I wouldn't touch one hair on his goddamn little head. I love the little son of a bitch. I'd do anything for him. Any fucking thing for him. But that bitch, as long as I live, she'll never let me forget what happened.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Ooh, we're back.
Back in spooky. I almost said November.
Spooky November. And we're back as a show. We've been off the air for a little while.
Who's we?
Well, we're spin Polish, like in Lucas always spinning, and we both happen to be Polish. I am one of the hosts, Ryan Swinsky.
And I am Bartek, the other host.
And we're both Polish.
Yes, and spit.
And we're both back.
Yes, I'm back your ring.
You do have a spine again.
Yes.
One of the reasons that we had to take a large break was because Bartek had to get his spine checked
We were
out.
going to have a short break because Ryan was getting married, but then I had to have surgery, so it was a long break.
You had to have surgery on your back. How's your back?
Good. I can stand up straight.
Ish. For small periods of time, you can sit down and then you have to get up. So if Bartek has to mysteriously stand up in this
I'm
podcast...
at 5 minutes of sitting right now.
He's at 5 minutes.
I'm timing with my watch.
He has to get up at some point.
So if you hear beeping, that's my watch, and I'm sorry.
And it's his watch saying, stand up or your spine will implode. Meanwhile, I got married.
Yeah.
And my spine is fine.
That rhyme.
I'm a rapper now. At my wedding, instead of vows, I rapped. Can you imagine that? I just dropped some sick beats. I'm like, okay.
Did you beatbox?
Well, I didn't beatbox, but we were all beatboxing internally, like our hearts.
You could hear the music in your words.
We could hear it. Yeah.
Take that, Eminem. Can you do that?
Eminem can do Venom. So I'm not as good as Eminem. I'm not claiming that.
Eminem.
Venom. Johnny Mnemonic. So, Bartek, we're back. We're doing our show, Pictures Powwow.
Yes.
A show in which we cover a movie that has been recommended, whether it has been recommended by you, by me, or the listening people. And those listening people, you know, they can email us or tweet us or message us on Facebook to say, hey, you should do this movie, and we'll add it to our list of movies.
Yes, and we're currently in Spooky Month.
Yeah, well, we stopped halfway through Spooky Month, and then we were left with a spooky movie to still cover, and we're like, well, we'll cover it when we come back, and now it's November, and that movie is The Shining.
Yes, we promised.
And yes, a listening person, fellow podcaster Sean from the Columbo Confab podcast or the Best Pictures podcast, recommended that we do The Shining. He's great. He recommended it in terms of, I want to know if anyone under 30 actually knows this movie and appreciates it. That kind of very much like, I was there at the time, but do the younger people actually recognize this film for its brilliance? Because that is a great point to bring up. A lot of people, you know, we kind of, a lot of people of our generation, Bartek, may not have seen The Shining, but know of it due to its pop culture reputation.
Yes, I was one of them.
We were talking about The Simpsons just before we started recording proper, and The Simpsons has a whole episode where it's just like, you don't need to see The Shining, you've seen The Simpsons.
A whole third of an episode, because it was a segment of the Halloween
But it
episode,
felt like the whole episode.
It's pretty memorable. I struggle to remember The Simpsons sometimes, but that one I remember.
The Shinning.
Yeah. The Shinning.
The Shinning! Yeah, so it's a great question. So, Bartek, what is our histories with The Shining? So you just kind of gave yours away. You're aware of it from The Simpsons?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'd probably heard of it before The Simpsons, but like parodies and references in other media is basically how I knew The Shining. So actually seeing it for myself was, you know, me getting all the nuances.
So were you aware it was a Stanley Kubrick film?
Yes.
Were you aware it was a Stephen King adaptation?
Yes, although that took me a while to learn. It's not a recent thing I learned, but at some point I learned, like, oh, it's a Stephen King adaptation.
And he did not like the movie very much.
Yeah, I keep reading things online that's like people are misunderstanding. It's like he likes the movie, but he hates it as an adaptation.
Yeah, I read the book back in high school.
Oh, right on.
And they are very different.
They sound different from what I read, yeah.
I'll give a quick review of the book. Welcome to Book Powwow with Ryan. Literary powwow. So the book's great in its own right. He is right, as an adaptation, the movie is very different. The movie kind of doesn't really care as much about the character-driven narrative that is the book. The book's more about like Jack Torrance and alcoholism. This movie doesn't really bother with that. Like, it's there, but you wouldn't really think of this movie as a struggle with addiction.
Yeah, some of my expectations going in, when I was reading the difference between the book and the film, I'm like, oh, the book kind of did the things that I was expecting.
And the book leans way more into its spooky supernatural demons in terms of like it's much more in my recollection. Remember, I haven't read this since high school, so it's been like 10 years.
Yeah.
It felt more like, yeah, they're demons. While in this movie, it feels like you could see them in a multitude of ways.
Everyone online that I've been reading just say ghosts.
Ghosts in general, but there's a whole plethora of interpretations, psychological things. Is it the Indian burial ground? Like, all this kind of stuff is tied into it. But the book, it's like the maze literally is a monster that attacks them. So, that kind of thing. So it's like, I like the aspect that the book is more of a character-driven thing, but I also like the fact that this movie doesn't lean as blatantly on the supernatural as the book does. So it's one of those things. So my history is, I have of course seen The Shining, the movie, many times. I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan. I mean, I'm a fan of his movies. Him as a person is a different question altogether. So yeah, I've seen this many times, and like you, Bartek, I absorbed this in pop culture as well. Like, I didn't see this until early high school, perhaps. Maybe a bit earlier, but that Simpsons episode is a real definitive breakdown of The Shining. There's no point of trying to do a parody of The Shining ever again, or ever. The Simpsons did it. That's my hard take. I don't know how you feel, but The Simpsons just nailed it. So, Bartek, having now seen The Shining for the first time, how did you feel?
I liked it. I liked the characters, the acting. I liked watching it. The atmosphere was great. There were a couple of things that I'm a bit iffy on. But overall, I can say I enjoyed the film.
Nice.
I kind of stick to some of the things I'm iffy on, but overall, viewing experience, very fun.
Now, of course, before we delve deeper, we are talking about the extended cut, is it? The 2 hours and 20-minute cut or whatever it is.
From what I read on the Wikipedia page, the premiere one was like 2 hours 26, then there was a 2 hour 23, and then there was a 2 hour one.
And there was a 90-minute one for the UK because they are a lot more stringent on their...
the shortest one that Wikipedia listed was 2 hours.
No, there was a 90-minute one for the UK for a time because, or like 95, because they were harsh on their rating system.
Was this back in the day of their video nasties or whatever it was?
I think so. Yeah. Maybe a bit before.
Yeah, but the one that I ended up watching was the 2 hour 23, which I think's the one that everyone watches.
Yeah. So... yeah, we're basically, they're all basically the same movie in regards, except for they're just slightly longer or slightly shorter, but they're all great cuts for the most part, I would say. But we're talking about, the one that Bartek watched, or the extended one, whichever ones.
Apparently the nuance of this one is that it cuts out a hospital scene at the end and that's it.
Ooh, the hospital scene. No, so we're going to be talking about it in depth, spoilers, so if you haven't seen The Shining, go away, come back. I mean, if you haven't seen The Shining and you're listening to this review, you've had, I don't know, how many years? 40 years?
As of next year, yeah.
So, come back, listen to this. So, you liked it, but you have some things that you're a little niggling on.
Yes.
So, for me, I respect this movie quite a lot, but do I like it? Yes, I do. It's one that's grown on me way more over the years.
I feel like that would happen to me too if I watch it again, yeah.
I prefer other Stanley Kubricks. A lot of people consider this one of his best movies or his best. It's definitely one of his unappreciated movies because it wasn't very well received when it came out. He got nominated for a Razzie as a director. That's insane. Can you... like, that's
Yeah, the Wikipedia entry, when it talked about, like, the reception, it was like, these people hated it, but then 10 years later, they really liked it.
Yeah,
like, even Roger Ebert.
Yeah, Roger Ebert is a classic example. So, I like this movie. It grows on me more and more as I watch it, but I still consider it one of Stanley Kubrick's lesser films for what I'm looking for. I prefer stuff like A Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, Doctor Strangelove,
Love Doctor Strangelove.
Paths of Glory, stuff like that. But this movie is still great. The thing about it, though, is at this point, it's kind of impenetrable. It's like everyone's discussed this movie. There's literally a documentary about everyone's theories on this movie. That's insane.
Room 237, I think it was called.
And it's like, how can you talk about this movie anymore? It's like Citizen Kane. It's like Casablanca. It's like all those great movies where it's like everyone's... Or 2001, Space Odyssey as well. Like, everyone's had their discussion on this movie, so what is there to say? And I think that's one of the reasons why, for me, I'm kind of a bit stand back of The Shining too, because it's just so revered. So when you actually watch it, you're like, okay, yeah, it's just Jack Nicholson having fun. And I love Jack Nicholson. I love that guy. But he is overselling the shit out of this, and I love it. Like, that's what the thing Stephen King hates about this adaptation is, and he's right. Jack is supposed to start out as a good, normal guy and then descend into madness. But Jack Nicholson is one of those guys who's already fucking crazy. Like, as soon as you meet him, there's something off about him immediately out of the gate. And then it's just like, he just escalates.
For me, like, the first scene, I was kind of all right with him, but then in the car, he's like, you see, he's seen it on TV. That was where I'm like, okay.
See, it's all right. It's on TV. Or like, just when Daddy talks to him, and he just doesn't respond. He just hates that kid so much.
But he'd do anything for him.
He'd do anything. I love the little bastard. I love him, Lloyd. So, Bartek.
Mm-hmm.
So when you walked into this, you were aware of its reputation as one of these. It literally on its poster says a modern masterpiece.
I think so. Yeah.
So how did you feel walking into it and walking out of it with that kind of reputation and prestige behind it, and it being a Kubrick film, who in itself adds extra layer of prestige?
Yeah. So I know that in the past there have been many things that, like, I'd seen in pop culture so many times, and when I finally watched it, it was this whole thing of like, oh, now I see the nuances of how it actually plays out. So I was walking in being like, there are going to be things that, like, all the parodies didn't, really cover. So, like, I didn't even know the setup of, like, why he was looking after the hotel or anything like that, so I learnt that. And immediately that was something new for me to learn about. And I knew that there was a whole thing, like, he has a wife and a son, but I didn't really know what their characters are like. It was just in my head like, oh, well, I guess they're Marge and Bart, but no, they're not. So, yeah, it was fresh for me. Despite the fact that I knew some iconic imagery. And, like, even one of the things I know is that, like, there are the sister ghosts.
Yes.
And there's the scene where he's, like, on the tricycle, he sees them in the hallway, and they say that line, and, like, yeah, I know about this, but then I didn't know about the face the son makes when it cuts to
when he's shocked.
his shocked face.
It is one of the great child performances of all time, I would say.
It was great, but I did find myself laughing quite a number of times.
Well, that's the thing. I rewatched this, not last night or recently, actually, Bartek. I rewatched The Shining a couple of weeks ago. I saw it projected on the big screen in a 4K release because Dr. Sleep's coming out, or has come out. And I got to see it on the big screen for the first time. And people were laughing consistently throughout the movie because Jack Nicholson's quite funny. And that kind of stuff's funny. And I think, like, it's that thing of, it's like when The Exorcist got re-released, people found it really funny because that era of horror isn't what we're accustomed to anymore. We're not accustomed to these slow burn reactions. We're more accustomed to a thing jumping out at you and going,
scares,
boo, or hey, it's me, Vincent D'Onofrio, and I'm going to be on Skype telling you about Bagul. Like, we're used to, more in horror, being told directly what the fuck's happening. And in The Shining, you get that. You actually get that at the very beginning, but it still doesn't help you. Like, when he's like, oh yeah, he murdered his wife and 2 daughters, and He's giving him the whole layout of everything that's going to happen. You still come out of the movie like, what the fuck? What? Like in a good, for me, a good way. I don't know about.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying that I laughed my whole way through. It was just like little moments with the wife and the son. Like I didn't. Obviously, Jack Nicholson. It's Jack Nicholson. You're gonna like laugh a little bit, but I didn't really find
and I think
him consistently funny or anything like that.
I found Jack Nicholson not consistently, but he had funny moments that I feel were very intentional, like when Lloyd appears.
Yeah,
and he's just like, "Hiya, Lloyd,"
like
and
this,
it's just like this
There's...
weird pseudo transatlantic performance he's giving, where he's doing that weird, like old timey accent for no reason. Or that way he clips manner of speech, and you're like, "What the hell's Jack doing?"
I was gonna say funny in the way, kind of like Vampire's Kiss with Nick Cage. Like he's going crazy, but there is like some element of comedy,
and there's a reason.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious to hear what you found funny about the wife, Shelley Duvall's character, because you mentioned, Danny, that he's a kid and he has fun, weird reactions, or his little friend.
Yeah.
Which is very weird, but like Shelley Duvall,
it's not that I found her like a barrel of laughs the whole way through, but there's just like little physical movements. Like there's just before the scene where she sees the guy in the bear or dog suit blowing the guy, like the way she's like moving around while she's running up the stairs, it just kind of looked a bit funny, puppety to me.
Yeah, I think. See, I find I find that very curious because I didn't find her very funny. I didn't find that funny at all. I found it genuinely it's engaging, and
her performance fits the character. I'm not saying otherwise. Yeah,
is it a performance? Because do you know about the behind the scenes of how Stanley Kubrick just basically treated her like garbage?
I've heard it. Yeah, the enforced method acting, I think it's called.
That's the thing I got to say about The Shining. As much as everyone loves this movie, one of the things that holds me back from truly loving it is the fact that Stanley Kubrick cost this woman her mental health. Like, she is very much not okay from this experience, and
maybe
you can tell.
But worse director then.
yeah, worse as in terrible person. Like, I understand. Like, there's the argument to be made. There's a method to the madness. The art speaks for itself. That kind of thing. I'm usually not very squeamish about this kind of stuff. Like, usually I can do death of the author kind of thing. I can take the text at face value of like she's giving a great performance, but there is something where you just go. Whenever this movie's talked about the legacy, and then when you bring up the fact that Stanley Kubrick treated Shelley Duvall like a piece of garbage, it is often met with the excuse of, but her performance is really great. I'm like, yeah, it is.
But is it worth it?
But is it worth it in the long run? And people will go, yes, because it's The Shining. But here's the thing. Unfortunately, people iconicize and romanticize and look up to Jack Nicholson in the movie and not her. And when
apparently Jack Nicholson hates that.
Yeah, because I agree. Because when I watch it, Jack's great. I love Jack as an actor, but Shelley Duvall is what carries the movie the whole way through because she's the only character who is human in terms of like you understand where she's coming from, you emotionally empathize with her, you understand where she's coming from. Her and Scatman Crothers are the only nice people in this whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
And he is great, Scatman. I love Scatman Crothers in this. But so, what were your issues? Because mine are more kind of those outsider things where it's like
more meta production kind of thing.
Yeah, and reputation and whatnot. While when I actually do watch the movie, I can sit down and enjoy it, and I don't have any problems with it in terms of narrative or characters or stuff.
And I'm thinking in future viewings, I'll probably be the exact same.
Yeah,
it's just like expectations and stuff. Yeah. Well, obviously, though, there is like a mystery element, as in like what's going on, what's causing all the issues happening here. And I walked in thinking that it was going to be pretty much all psychological. There wasn't really going to be supernatural stuff going on, which I'm not very familiar with Stephen King, but I feel like maybe that's a foolish kind of thing to expect.
It is.
Given, like Sleepwalkers and what I've heard about like all the other things he's made. So I was thinking that it was going to be a more psychologically driven thing, like a lot of the weird stuff that you see in the film there's going to be an explanation based on like characters' psyches and like what they've gone through. But then and Stanley Kubrick said that this was a key moment in the film, like when he's let out of the pantry by one of the ghosts or the spirits or whatever they are.
Yeah.
That's meant to be the confirmation to the audience, hey, there are actually entities here.
Yeah.
So that kind of... It was a bit iffy to me when I watched the film, and I felt like there was a bit too much going on with that.
You wanted more clarity between it being a metaphorical psychological thing or it being a literal supernatural thing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because it is said to be a psychological horror, so I thought there would be a bit more of the psychology going on.
Yeah, I understand that. I think also, though, it is one of those typical tropes or kind of structures of a haunted house type movie in which the audience and the characters are led astray of thinking, is it this or is it that? And it's kind of a mixture of both or neither kind of thing a lot of the time. Any other issues that you had or questions or niggling things with the movie that didn't sit with you?
Most of the issues are mainly related around that general idea of like the expectations I had going in. Because actually in the past 2 months where I've been, recovering and stuff, I have actually watched a couple of psychological, like, mind screwy kind of things. And so I was kind of in the mood, like, oh, let's see how The Shining does it. And then when there were a bunch of, outside forces, like, not everyone is exactly crazy kind of thing going on, I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit different.
Yeah, and I can see the argument being made, too, that in the film, Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Torrance, is already, unscrewed mentally. He's already physically abused his child.
So the setup's
there. And the setup's there, and then, him returning to drinking and not being able to actually write anything is kind of what mentally pushes him in the literal sense of, like, the psychological sense of, oh, it's all these things, and the isolationism, but also there are ghosts. Yeah. And the film does go out of its way to show that they exist. And I agree with Stanley Kubrick that once the pantry thing opens, that's a clear, definitive answer. But for me, what really cements it is once Shelley Duvall starts seeing ghosts. When she starts seeing them, there's no ifs and or buts. You can't walk out of the film and be like, oh, the ghosts could be psychological or metaphorical. No, they are ghosts.
Well, see, the thing that... And obviously, the pantry thing happens before she sees the ghost, right? So...
But I could see like a film goer or someone defending this or something go, oh, it could be some other thing about it. But like once she sees it.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say was like it's established pretty early on that all three characters have their little psychological stresses. So it wouldn't be too out of the blue for me to have them, start seeing the ghosts. Yeah. It's just that she starts seeing them pretty late in, like it's already at the climax.
Yeah, and when she sees them, it's the weirdest scene in the fucking movie.
Yeah, because apparently there is context to all of it, but Stanley Kubrick didn't bother with any of
it. He didn't want you to know what the photo at the end means.
Yeah.
Which is one of the best final shots.
That's something I didn't know about the film. Like, I was reading online, like, oh, a lot of people know without seeing the film that there's the photo thing at the end. I didn't know about it at all. So when that happened, I'm like, what, just one more, all right?
That's what I really do appreciate about a filmmaker like Stanley Kubrick is, yes, he was very methodical to the point of monstrous when it came to details. And although I criticize him for being very poor to people, to act as production assistants, whatever.
Except Danny, apparently.
Well, he has to be nice to a kid. He's not that evil.
But apparently he, went out of his way to, convince him it was a drama, not a horror. Yeah.
And he was nice to Scatman Crothers. Because Jack Nicholson loves Scatman Crothers. He was the reason he got in that movie.
I've seen Cuckoo's Nest.
Scatman. But... there is something to be said still. I don't want to discredit the fact that the joy of watching Stanley Kubrick movie on a rewatch and in general is there is so much on the screen to get out of the viewing experience. Like when I saw it on the big screen, you notice when he's touring the hotel, you see a bunch of walls covered in those photos that you will see at the end. And so that's why it adds an extra detail of when they do zoom in on that photo at the end, it's not like it's just out of nowhere. It's not like we haven't seen these photos in this massive hotel at all.
Something glaring that was just under their nose the whole time.
Yeah, under our nose the whole time. And you go, oh, maybe, if they looked at any of these photos, there could be something there. I love with this movie the score.
Mm-hmm.
and how unfortunately now horror movies think that they can try and do the score by having that loud,
The violin thing.
that loud violin thing, and you go, no, you can't. There's a reason why it's here in The Shining.
Definitely, this film builds up suspense the whole way through.
Because I don't think that the music's loud violin screech is used as a jump scare necessarily. It's used as like a bookend to like, that's the end of that, and here we are on to the next thing. Now it's Tuesday. Now it's 4 months later, or however long it is.
Did 4 months pass? I thought they were all in the second month.
Second or third month, yeah. I'm
Okay.
just using using
I get what you
whatever.
mean,
But with the film Bartek, we only have a few characters that we get to meet.
That's true.
Who did you like? Who did you get drawn to, big or small?
Well, I really obviously liked Scatman Crothers.
We all love Scat.
Our lead three obviously did a good job, and they were the main characters. Thinking about it now, I guess I really did like the butler ghost, the
Yeah.
Grady,
Yeah.
Delbert Grady.
Yeah, he was great.
Not to be confused with the killer Grady, apparently, which is just another mindfuck thing.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that until I was reading afterwards. Like, oh yeah, there was a different name.
Yeah. It is interesting. Like, yeah, he was the previous caretaker, yeah. And,
No, he was always the caretaker, Jack Nicholson.
yeah, Jack Nicholson was always here. I like Scatman.
Yeah, definitely.
Scatman Crothers
Just
is
so much charisma.
So full of joy. So that when he comes back to the movie after having a long journey to get back, I also love that he's just a dirty old man. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like,
He got the two
post-
Afro women.
yeah. And he's a bit of a player. You can tell he's a bit of a player. Just his mentality.
That's
you can
not
tell. You can tell he's a bit of a player.
That's not a room that women don't get invited to.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved his scenes with Danny. You know, you could feel the connection between those two actors. And there's a great behind-the-scenes documentary by Stanley Kubrick's daughter, I believe. And there's just an interview with Scatman Crothers, and he's like weeping at the beauty of being able to be in a movie like this. And you're like, man, Scatman Crothers, I feel it too. That's why I love the fact that he's in the movie, because him coming in as a joyful figure who's still ominous at points. Like, he knows what's up.
Nothing.
He knows what's up.
There's nothing in that room.
He knows what's up. And he knows the history. He knows the shaky shit that's going on. But with Kubrick, a lot of the time, my big problems with his movies are they're very cold and analytical. And there's not a warmth or a humanity there a lot of the time. And that's okay. Like, I don't need that for a lot of films. But in The Shining, a movie that's so cold and isolated, and you feel the cold of the snow, and you feel the insanity brewing, you have someone like Scatman Crothers come in, and it adds this necessary warmth. So it's really unfortunate that he dies.
Yeah.
And he dies.
And it's very sudden, too.
If he had The Shining... can I get cinema sins on you? If he had The Shining, how come he couldn't detect that Jack Nicholson was right there? Ding! That's a minus a point. Well, you can sense things with The Shining. You can sense what's going on. So if he's in a seemingly empty room, how come he can't sense Jack Nicholson's insanity right there? That's a thing, too, you can complain about. The Shining doesn't fucking matter that much in a movie called The Shining.
Yeah, that's true.
But it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter, because the movie's that great.
One of the things that I think is worth praising is the sets and location.
Oh man, don't you want to live there?
I definitely want to visit there.
Yeah, you don't actually want to live there.
One of the things that I'm really looking forward to when I do rewatch the film is I read that, like, a lot of, like, first of all, I didn't realize it was all sets. Like, I was actually convinced this was a real place. They purposely fucked around with the geography, and they put like windows in places and doors in places where it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's something I really want to have a look at, because I was sort of trying to get an idea of the layout, and there were sometimes it's like, wait, was it like this earlier in the film? It's like, yeah, that's really interesting. Like,
I love that.
It's great when you got like a good setting. Like, I know that's something that gets brought up when we talk about the first Metal Gear Solid. Like, the setting is so memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing too, like, this is a movie in which I could hear someone easily argue this is a movie with style over substance, for naysayers. This movie is very stylish. but not a lot happens. And you can actually, it is a very simple story at the end of the day. Jack Nicholson just tries to murder his family, and he fails.
When the film ended, I was like, that was 2.5 hours long, but I can kind of think back to all the events, yeah.
It's very, and I could see someone saying it's too slow. Like, seeing Scatman Crothers go across the country and talk to people and come back, I could see that. And
I know that some of that stuff was cut out in one of the shorter
Shelley
cuts.
Duvall just watching TV.
It's been a long time since I heard the Roadrunner theme, so that was nice to revisit.
One of my favorite scenes of Shelley Duvall is at the very beginning when she's talking to the doctor, is it? The woman who's coming in to check on Danny.
Psychologist lady.
Yeah,
her.
And she's explaining how the incident happened where Danny had his arm broken, was it? Dislocated. And I just love Shelley Duvall's nervous, quirky performance with that cigarette just burning in her hand.
That's a very good character establishment moment, yeah.
And it's just such a great performance.
Good monologue.
It's a great monologue. It's a great exchange. It's a great difference of you like how she's just such a victim and how she's making excuses. Now, what was your favorite scene of the movie, though, Bartek? Like, your favorite definitive scene? Everyone has their favorite big momenty scenes. Is your favorite the one between Grady and Jack in the toilet, or is there others that stick out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For some reason, I think I'm really drawn to, and maybe this is a weird choice, but earlier in the film, before the place has even been, abandoned, the tour?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the tour, actually.
Yeah, it was a great setup to everything. I love Jack Nicholson.
A lot of setups, a lot of red herrings, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and just the guy, we haven't talked about, but the actual guy...
The owner, Stuart something, Ullman?
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He plays it perfect. Like he doesn't play it like he's evil or ominous. He just plays it like, I'm just a guy who's just
down to earth,
considering
here, what's going on.
I gotta tell you what's going on, that kind of thing. He's very nice to Scatman. I like my favorite scene. It's an iconic scene you have to appreciate. Give me the bat. Give me the bat.
Yeah.
That whole scene where she comes in and she sees all work and no play.
Yeah, the script.
And the
manuscript.
Yeah, and how it just changes formats.
It looks like a script if you don't pay attention to the
when
words,
she's flicking through it. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. And just Jack Nicholson is he's just wound up so high, and he's just so insane. And it's funny and it's scary at the same time, because it's funny when he's like, "Give me the bat. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm just gonna bash them the fucking." But it's also terrifying because Shelley Duvall is fucking terrified of her husband. And that's the kind of stuff I love, is the cat and mouse scenes between her and him. Like the earlier scene when she comes in and he kind of berates her and tells her to basically leave and never come back here when he's working.
Typing thing.
Yeah, and he's like exaggeratingly typing to get the point across. Those are my favorite scenes, where they're the cat and mouse between the two, between those two in particular. Like once she goes to get the snow cat going and he's fucked it already, and she's like, "Oh!" It's like them versing each other is a very interesting dynamic, because she doesn't want to, and he really does.
Yeah.
Like, from the very outset, he does not like her very much.
Definitely after the scene where she wakes him up and gives him the eggs, like, after that, there's really, not much warmth between the two of them.
That and every scene with Lloyd.
Lloyd,
the
bartender, yeah?
Lloyd is great. Lloyd, you remember who that actor is?
No, I don't.
He had two very iconic roles in the 1980s. The Shining and Blade Runner. He's Tyrell.
Which one's Tyrell again?
The head of Tyrell Corp, the inventor of the replicants.
Right, the guy at the top of the tower?
Yeah, with the big glasses.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was about that actor, but they were like, "You're one creepy little man, and we're going to make sure that you play creeps." I've only seen him, I think, in those two movies, maybe something else, and he's always...
As far as I'm aware, the same, I guess.
The very regal little creepy guy who doesn't do anything to actually be creepy. Like, you don't have a scene where Lloyd is holding a knife menacingly. He is just a genuinely nice gentleman. He doesn't really do anything.
In this film, it's just that he comes out of nowhere and just does his job.
Does it, and Yeah, and the
Does
fact
his
that he's
apparent job.
supplying, he's forcing alcohol onto an alcoholic, that kind of thing. I love Jack Nicholson in that scene in particular, where he's just like, "I love the little bastard. I just love him." He's like,
I'd do anything.
"I do anything for him, Lloyd," and he's just so disingenuous, and yet he still believes it in his brain. I don't know, the way that scene is lit too, with like the bar being the light source coming up, and it's just so much great shit is in this movie. Visual, the music, like you said, the setting itself. The Overlook Hotel is one of the most iconic like sets or set designs.
Again, I can't believe it was a set.
Like the carpet is so iconic, or the fact that there is a lot of Native American kind of artwork and imagery and animal skins on the walls because it's on an Indian burial ground, and like how that's just chucked in there, just a random fact, and it never truly comes back into the plot. Except
it comes
for,
into the big theories that people
it comes
have.
into big theories because of ghosts, right? But like
Like when I heard they mentioned like, oh, because it was built on top of an Indian burial ground, like my initial reaction to that was like, oh, that's going to be a big deal, and it wasn't.
it wasn't. You didn't have like the Native American ghosts coming at them. You just had ghosts of people who stayed there at one point.
Yeah, that's the impression I got.
And they got stuck there. They either died there or they just kind of had something happen to them there.
They really loved the hotel and that became part of it or something.
Like the classic weird scene of him actually entering room 237 and there's like the naked lady.
Yeah.
And then she turns into like a naked old
Like
decomposing lady.
decaying lady, yeah.
And you're like, and then he comes back and he's like, nothing in there. And you're like,
It's like, yeah, you think back to Scatman Crothers, like, there's nothing in there. Was he telling the truth, or did he know that there was something in there?
he knows. He has the shine.
Is it always there? Like, that's the question.
That's right, Doc.
Like, when everyone's there throughout the year, if they go in there, is she there?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, how aware are the people that work there of what's going on? Because Scatman seems like he's very aware, but the guy, Mr. Ullman, he comes across very, like, matter of fact. There's apparently a cut scene that actually implicates Mr. Ullman a lot more.
Yeah,
where...
the hospital thing I mentioned earlier, right?
Is it the hospital thing?
From what I read, it's like at the end of the film, there's a hospital scene with Danny, Shelley Duvall, and him, and he hands Danny the tennis ball from earlier in the film, which implies, like, oh, was he there? Like,
he was the one rolling it,
something.
yeah. And that's one of those things where I'm glad that they cut it. We
Yeah.
don't need that. And I'm glad that
That's
there's
the
a
reason it was cut.
restraint there, because it's too much of a, ooh, he's in on it too. Yeah, this movie is just, it is a cinematic classic. It is everything you want from an auteur director like Stanley Kubrick. I mean, yes, it has its naysayers. I'm not the hugest fan of it. I still find it a great watch, but it's not one that I want to whack on a lot of the time. It's not one that I go to very much, not even in his catalog. I think it is partly is because it is my issue with Kubrick is, like I said, it's still very cold and detached, and I understand the reasoning for it, but sometimes, yeah, and, it's horror. But like I said, you got Scatman coming in to add that warmth and not levity, but like just that, not levity in the ha-ha sense, but levity in just a tonal sense. But it's still that problem of sometimes when you watch a auteur director and you just notice their thing that they do, you go, please do it slightly differently. I'm not saying he doesn't. It's just one of those things where it's like, yes, Stanley, you are very much into static, like, very deliberate, slow-paced, cold, methodical, and that is a mood thing. A lot of Stanley Kubrick's are mood movies. You don't just whack on 2001: A Space Odyssey at a party. You can do that with Dr. Strangelove, but here's the thing. That movie's weird too.
It's a dark comedy, yeah.
It's weird as well. Like, it is a weird movie. But, like, I would say The Shining, yeah, it is one of the best horror movies ever made. Was I scared? No. But I did get unsettled at points. There's something inherently primal within us that's irksome about a father on the murder, who wants to pursue and murder his own family.
The scene where, like, he puts Danny on his lap and like hugs him, says he loves him, but it's Jack Nicholson doing his Jack Nicholson kind of thing.
Yeah, but he also like, and I don't want to dissuade. He's doing his Jack Nicholson thing, but
Oh, yeah,
Jack
I didn't
Nicholson's
want-
one
yeah.
of the best actors of his generation, and still today, I think. So it works. Like that scene is genuinely sad and mournful. Like,
like,
I
but
feel bad
yeah.
for him because it feels like he doesn't want to kill him, but he knows he will try later.
But also, there's the whole thing of like, there's the recurring line of like, Dad, and it's like, yes, Danny, and then at the end, it's like, Dad, what?
Yeah,
It's like,
he just
ooh.
glazes over again. I do love this movie. I do love it. Like, you have to appreciate it for what it is.
Mad
I
respect.
wish a lot more. I'm not even going to say I wish a lot more movies are like this. We do have a lot of movies today like this in the genre of horror and suspense and
Yeah,
psychological.
wish upon.
Wish upon. No, stuff like Ari Aster is doing a lot of slow burn horror stuff with Hereditary and Midsummer, and yeah, I think horror and psychological thrillers are getting to this point in which there's a meticulous art form crafted to it. So I'm not gonna say, oh, I wish more modern movies were like The Shining in its meticulous nature, because that isn't true. There are a lot of movies like that. Usually when I say I wish movies of a such and such modern day generation could be like the past is when it comes to comedy movies, because I feel comedy for a large majority has gotten lazier. Well, I think horror has stepped up its game. Yes, we still have the jump scare spooky fest of some movies, the mainstream stuff, but even some mainstream stuff like the Conjuring movies have still got the jump scares, but they're a lot more reputable and they're a lot more of a fine-tuned, crafted piece of art than just schlocky entertainment. Is there any other things you want to mention about the movie The Shining, Bartek? Things that really hooked you or things that left you with wanting to talk about more? We haven't talked about some iconic moments like Here's Johnny.
Here's Johnny, yeah.
Classic scene.
Man, we've done actually a pretty good job. I don't think we've been recording for even an hour, and I think we've covered pretty generally everything. Is there anything that I can think of?
I mean, the maze at the end when Danny is smart. That's the thing. He's a kid and he's smart enough to know how not to keep.
He's aware of his footprints. That's probably giving him away.
He's already been in the maze.
He's been in the maze before. Like, yeah. When I was reading about the film after I watched it, I read that there was like a motif of like imperfect mirrored images throughout the film. So like there's the twins who aren't actually twins, but they look like twins. And apparently there are some scenes earlier in the film when they were cleaning up the hotel and the employees were there. Like some employees looked the same, but if you look closely, they weren't the same. And like during the interview at the beginning, a third person enters the room and from behind he looks like Jack Nicholson. And I think even the photos in Scatman Crothers' rooms of the two women, they were like facing each other, one's from the back, one's from the front.
Yeah, it's all these deliberate little choices that aren't like, when you say that, it sounds like these are obvious things that you could see right in your face, but it's very subtle stuff, very, very subtle stuff that just, is just there in the background and it's for you to pick up on.
And I think the maze's layout is also symmetrical or something.
I love that shot where Jack Nicholson's looking at the little miniature maze that's inside the house.
Yeah,
and then it becomes
the real maze,
the real maze, a bird's eye view of the real maze, and they're in there. Like that was
good imagery.
That's how you'll do a movie.
The scene earlier where I mentioned Jack Nicholson being woken up and he's given like eggs, and like you see the long shot of that scene is in the mirror.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the scene's not in the mirror and everything just seems like completely backwards. Like he's on the right now, but he's on the left.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff in here. Like Stanley Kubrick breaks the 180 rule at one point with Grady and Jack in the bathroom. Like there's lots of things that are rules that you would expect Stanley Kubrick to strictly follow because he's known for being this methodical dictator of movies. Is this the movie in which he needed like 147 takes of something? I can't remember which movie that was, but like there's a movie in which he needed like 147 takes of a specific thing.
I don't think this was this movie, but I think I did read that like every take you see of Jack Nicholson in this film's like the 20th one or something.
Right.
To like make him more tired and angry or something.
I will say one thing that I find very funny as a behind the scenes, just because this is a movie with great behind the scenes stuff. Scatman Crothers got wrangled into this by Jack Nicholson. He was a big fan of Scatman. And they were like, Stanley, I think, was like, we should get like a stunt double for the bit where we hit him with an axe.
Yes.
And Jack Nicholson
The bat.
with the axe.
Oh, sorry, you're hitting Scatman. Yes,
Scatman with the axe in the
Yep.
chest. And Jack Nicholson's like, no, Scatman can handle it. He's Scatman. Like he's like being such a dude bro friend. Like no, he's my best friend. He can handle it. And Scatman got hit with that axe and had to fall on that hard floor like, I don't know, like 30 times. And he said like it fucked his back, but it was worth it. Like Scatman, out of every single person that I've seen talk about The Shining, is the one who loves it the most. Like he's weeping, he's crying with joy. Like he's so like he finds like out of everyone, I'm most moved by the fact that Scatman Crothers is moved by the movie, and Scatman Crothers is in the movie because Scatman was he was a jazz guy, he was a poetry guy, and he got into acting, and he's probably most known for this, right? And then One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as an actor. I really liked him in the Twilight Zone movie, in the Steven Spielberg directed segment, in which it's like a bunch of old people in an old folks' home. Great performance. Great performance from everyone. There's not a dull moment in this movie for me. Everything flows smoothly. The music's great. The set design's great. Everything's great. Like, all the iconic moments are still iconic. At least for me. I don't know for you. Once you watched it and you saw the iconic moments play out, like here's Johnny and, all these things, or Red Rum and all that, did they still feel effective and effectively iconic to you?
Yeah. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I've seen this parodied before. It was like, I've seen this parodied, and this is it being played straight, and I can see why people remember it. And also, like I said, there were so many nuances to this film that aren't covered in, like, the Simpson thing was only like 7 minutes long. This is a 2.5-hour film, so there was a lot more going on that I wasn't going to expect. So obviously, and I think, you know what? When I saw the scene of like the guy in the bear or dog costume apparently blowing the other guy, I actually did recall, like, oh yeah, I think I remember someone talking about this once, but when it happened, I hadn't remembered it at all. So
it's a weird moment, isn't it?
It is a weird moment, but apparently my interpretation was right. It was a gay, affair or something.
It was a furry. Yeah, this, it is a masterpiece. One question I got for you.
Mm-hmm.
When it reveals what happened to Jack Nicholson, the jump cut
of the frozen body?
Yeah. Did you find it funny?
A little bit. I mean, I knew of that imagery, but...
From The Simpsons again?
Simpsons, but also online. I think it's used as like a minor meme for when something takes forever.
Yeah.
One thing that I wasn't expecting was that it was just going to be a jump cut for a few seconds. Like, I thought... maybe we'd see him like fall over for a bit and then it might fade into that. But no, it was like, dark, snowy night, jump cut to daytime. He's frozen with that expression.
You see, yeah, I flip-flop. Sometimes I find it funny and sometimes I find it genuinely effective. Like, ooh.
For me, it was like, oh, this is how they did it?
I think it's the editing is divisive in terms of it's a comedy cut, you could argue, like the hard cut. But also it works as an effective cut to just show the simple, brutal, realistic thing of what happened. Because at that point, when they're running through the maze and you have the lights and all of this, it feels very surreal and dreamy and woo. And then hard cut to the light of day and he's just a fucking corpse.
Yeah.
And then you go back to the hotel and you have the music playing, that very angelic, like sweet 1920s-esque music, and you zoom slowly in on that photo and you zoom down and you have the year it was and you're like, what the fuck
July
does
4th,
that
1921 or
what
something?
the hell does that mean? You're like, what does that mean? He's always been here though. Yeah, that's all I have to really say about The Shining. Yes, it's a movie worth watching, it's a movie worth discussing. Definitely, this movie's been discussed many a times, and you can understand why. Kubrick put a lot of effort in. Yes, he did mentally destroy an actress in the process, and that's not a good thing. That's something we shouldn't sweep under the rug with this. But the movie, it is one of those movies that inspires people to be creative. It inspires thought in what you actually watch as a movie. I would have loved to have watched this movie with my former housemate, Cassie, who was a crazy Christian girl who, when we watched something like Fargo, she was like, that movie had no point or merit.
You say that you've always lived with at least one person who's crazy. Would you want to watch it with all of them?
All of them. All of them.
Hey everyone, reunion. I got a movie to watch.
We got a movie to watch, and it's gonna be fucking. It's gonna be funny games.
And at the end, they're like, "That was good, Ryan. Thanks."
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, they would all love it. Yeah.
And then your sanest housemate is like, "Holy shit."
Yeah. Me. Holy shit. All right. Now, Bartek.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take us to the plug zone. I'm going to actually plug us in to Sean's podcast, his podcast, not the Columbo one. He hasn't given me a promo for the Columbo podcast that I listen to.
We'll make
but
one.
I'll make one right now. Hey, it's me, Sean, and I like Columbo.
I
And
like
I'm here
Columbo.
and I'm here with my friend Steve. Hi guys, it's me, Steve.
Wow, as a podcast listener, I want to listen to that. Listen today at www.thing.
No, in all genuineness, I do love the Columbo podcast a lot. I do love Sean's new podcast, the one I'm going to play the plug for now. Sean, thank you very much for giving the suggestion of The Shining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Neon, was it?
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Omedeto.
Should you explain what we're talking about?
The ending of the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion is infamous.
Yeah, and it's just, congratulations. Yep, good. Congratulations. Woo!
And then at the end, main character closes his eyes, smile, arigato, while the theme song plays in the background.
All right. Bartek, let's get plugged in 3, 2, 1, plug it in.
And the Oscar goes to...
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 Hi, my name is Sean, and I am the co-host of the Best Picture podcast. Each season, my co-host Eric and I randomly select a year and talk about the Best Picture nominees of that year, with each episode dedicated to a different movie. Did the Best Picture really win? Were there any overlooked movies? Was anything nominated that probably shouldn't have been? Listen to us and find out. Look for us wherever you can get fine podcasts.
So, we did The Shining. If you listening people at home wanting to suggest a movie for us to cover on the pod, our email address is...
spitandpolished@gmail.com.
Yes.
Spit and Polish Ed.
And you can find us on the social medias of Facebook and Twitter. Spit and Polish Presents. You'll find us.
Spit Polish Pre on Twitter.
You'll find us easy, and just, suggest something, if we haven't covered it already.
Everything goes on a list.
Everything goes on a hit list.
Ooh.
And if you're a fellow podcaster and you want to promo your show, email us and we'll work something out.
Yes.
And, it'll be a fun time had by all.
One more thing regarding the film. Was this one of the films that, when we were talking about we were going to do this eventually on the podcast, was this one of the ones that you said this is on Netflix?
It was.
It's another Jack Nicholson film that was on Netflix at some point. Then when we had to do it, it wasn't any longer.
Netflix in Australia! I
Which
swear.
is a Beastwick, now The Shining.
Did they have against Jack? Did he do something to them?
I don't know.
Jack, tell me, if you did something Netflix, was he one of those people who say Netflix can't make real cinema? Like, I don't know, like...
Is he friends with Spielberg?
Yeah, is he working for the Apple? the
Big
Apple one? Well, screw it. Marvel ain't cinema. I'm Scorsese. No.
It's comics.
Bartek,
Yes.
it's your turn
Yes, it is.
to suggest a movie.
Remember the part a few minutes ago when you mentioned old comedies?
Yes.
I've got one.
Yes.
I do. Yes, I have one. And I picked this and then I realized, I think this is going to be the oldest thing we've so far covered. Going down to 1963, I want to do the original The Pink Panther film.
Oh, goody. I have not all of them. I have most of them on the DVD box set.
That's the only one I have on DVD.
The reason I have, say, most of, there's like some like copyright issues, like 1 or 2 of them were made by a different studio. So it's like I have 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, like that kind of thing, and it
Okay,
really
yeah.
bugs me because it says the Pink Panther collection. I'm like, no, it isn't.
The Pink Panther collection in brackets, the ones that we produced anyway.
And it's not like the Pink Panther movies, like Pink Panther 1, Pink Panther 2. Like,
yeah, it's like
some of
Shot
them,
in the Dark.
yeah, Pink
yeah.
Panther, Shot in the Dark. Like,
I've only seen those two.
yeah, they're all pretty great.
Oh, and Steve Martin ones, of course.
The third one, I think, Pink Panther Strikes Again, is it? Or is it the fourth? One of them is where his boss becomes the villain because he's driven him insane.
Is it the boss from Shot in the Dark?
Yeah, it's his boss from pretty much all of them after the first one, I think, is driven insane via Clouseau's crazy antics, and he builds a laser to destroy everyone. So the Pink Panther movie with David Niven, he's the lead. They didn't realize Peter Sellers should be the lead, so they have David Niven in it as
Robert Wagner's in it too.
the Wag Dog. Yeah, he is in it.
Waggy.
Number 2 is in the movie. So, listening people, make sure to check out the original Pink Panther movie. It has the iconic theme music, the iconic Pink Panther cartoon.
Clouseau plays a violin at one point.
He's less French in the first one. Like, he has a less absurd French accent. He actually has a nuanced French accent. And then in the other ones, he's like, I am Inspector Clouseau. And he's very French. So, enjoy that. Bartek, a pleasure to be back on the pod.
Yes, absolutely. I think this went really well.
I think it went well. I hope listening people think it went well enough to review us and rate us on whatever podcast platforming sites allow it. That's a plug for you to do that, listening people.
Yep.
And if you don't, I'm afraid I'll have to come after you with an axe.
Yes. And now we have to announce the winner of the poll we mentioned at the end of the last episode between Team Wedding and Team Surgery.
Oh, yeah. Remind me how that poll was constructed?
The winner was Team Friendship.
Yeah, Team Poland. The poll was poll. A pleasure to be back on the pod with you, Bartek.
Yes, and we hope you enjoyed Wait, no, you're talking to me. Yes, pleasure with you too, Ryan.
Pleasure with you too, Bartek. Is that our new colloquial terms for goodbye? Pleasure be with you. Like,
hello, pleased people.
I am pleasured.
And we hope you enjoyed Spooky Month. Remember, this was a Spooky Month episode in November.
But we could also claim that we did it because Dr. Sleep's coming out. The semi-sequel follow-up. Woo! Until next time, listening people, remember to mistreat actress to the point of mental breakdown and you'll be considered one of the greatest directors of all time.